So, with 2020 being such a crazy year, I kind of want to reflect back a little bit on the past 4 years of Trump's accomplishments that we might have forgotten about at this point. The first one is the economic growth of the middle class Americans. Now, this article came out in late 2019, and it indicates that the middle class Americans had its highest level ever in gains during Trump's office, a whopping 6.8% since he took office. By comparison, during the 7.5 years under President Obama, starting at the end of the recession in June 2009 through January 2017, the median household income rose by only about $1,000. That's huge. That is a huge increase over, now at that time, 3 years during Trump. Now, obviously, the shutdown of the economy and the ongoing China virus crisis has kind of slowed things down, made it worse in a lot of regions. Depending on what state you're in, kind of seems like if you're in a red state, seems like the economy hasn't hit you as hard as compared to some of the blue states that have seen pretty bad unemployment rates. This is just a reminder that Trump had worked hard not just to benefit the rich, but to actually benefit middle class Americans, working class Americans, and it just speaks volumes to the gain increase in their salary, but also the reduction in taxes that most Americans received through the Trump tax cuts. Now, they got a little graph down here. It should be mentioned that the Obama recession recovery was the longest recovery since the Great Depression. You can see on here on the graph, well, all 8 years for the economy to come back to where it was. And you can just see the spike hit right as soon as Trump was elected. And there again is 6.8%. You can see Bush didn't do very good either. Not a fan of Bush, so but you can see Obama took quite a few years before the economy started coming back, and it just spiked right under Trump. And again, 2018, the poverty rate also fell to the lowest level since 2006. So again, there's a big misconception that the Trump economy only benefited the rich. You can clearly see middle class Americans benefit, the poverty rates decrease, which only benefit the lower class Americans. All around good news for the economy. And I think there's no reason to believe that the economy won't go back to the great shape that it was in before COVID. The second is the federal legalization of hemp and CBD under certain circumstances. There was a lot of states implementing their own marijuana laws, but without federal backing that up, a lot of marijuana growers were stuck in a limbo, especially hemp products and CBD products. They were having a hard time on the legalities of their business. With the federal legalization of these products, it made it easier for these people to start their businesses, to run their businesses, to sell their products, to get their products out to people, and to advertise, and other aspects of businesses that on the national level that they were never allowed to beforehand. So this was another great step forward in allowing Americans to decide instead of a federal government dictating things for every state. Next is a misconception that Trump is against the environment. Here we can see that Trump signed a major public lands conservation bill into law that included 1.3 million new acres of wilderness and permanently reauthorizes the Land and Water Conservation Fund, which supports conservation and outdoor recreation projects nationwide. It's the largest public lands bill Congress has considered in a decade, and it won large bipartisan majorities in the House and Senate. So there's this big misconception that's constantly pushed by the left that Trump does not care about the environment. And you can see here that this is the largest public land bill Congress has considered. So you can just see that Trump actually does care. When we talk about deregulating, we're talking about things that were overregulated, things that were just far beyond what they needed to be. And when we talk about things like the Paris Accord. They want us Americans to be paying for their pollution reduction, which is just not something that we should be in charge of. And since not signing the Paris Accord, we have actually reduced our CO2 emissions more than the average European country has. And then if you want to talk about further, you can talk about China and India. And if you want to expand on that even further, you can talk about China and India, even having, you can talk about China. If you want to expand on that further, you could bring up India and China being the largest polluters on the globe. And no one seems to mention that when it comes to European Union, Greta Thunberg, CNN. No one seems to talk about China. They don't talk about China being 90% of the problem when we're talking about pollution, and the ocean and the US being 3%. It's just something, again, not brought up. China can just pretty much do whatever they want. They're not held liable. They're not expected to pay. And meanwhile, Trump is being slammed as being anti-environmental. And that's clearly just not the case when you look at what he's done, and you look at how the US has progressed on the environment and reduction in pollution. All right, and lastly, another accomplishment, and lastly, another accomplishment that, and lastly, another accomplishment that we might have forgotten about was not only just the job growth in general, but I want to talk about, and this is from April 2019, the manufacturing industry that added almost 500,000 jobs during his first 3 years as president. That is huge. If you recall, Obama wondered what kind of magic wand Trump had when Trump said that he would bring back manufacturing jobs and that it would be impossible to bring back manufacturing jobs, and we just need to accept the new reality of the economy, that manufacturing jobs would never be coming back. Yet here we are, 4 years later now, but we have added, but in April 2019, he had added 480,000 jobs, and 200,000 of those were in the past 12 months. So from April 2018 to April 2019, over 200,000 manufacturing jobs were added. And as we can see with the coronavirus affecting the economy and the global economy, uh, it's important to have manufacturing in the US, not just from a, made in America pride type of thing, but really we were reliant on these other countries to manufacture medical devices, PPE, glasses, hand sanitizer, even medication and drugs. There was several instances of China actually turning around ships that were full of medical supplies to come back to China and help, Chinese citizens, and you can't really blame them. Trump actually did the same thing with Canada in one instance, but this just shows how important it is to make our own products. Now, we don't have to make everything here, and sometimes it doesn't make sense to make everything here, but it's crazy to be so reliant on other countries. That's why I think it was important that we are no. That's why I think it was important to become energy independent for the first time in decades. Under Trump, that was another accomplishment. We're producing more oil and more energy than we ever have been, and we are no longer relying on other countries like we were. We don't need to start wars on the other side of the globe now to secure oil reserves like we did in Iraq and Iran. These are great things that Trump has done that I think have been overshadowed by the coronavirus. And I think once the election's over and we can kind of go back to normal, because I think the coronavirus will no longer be political, we can see the Trump economy coming back. It all comes from deregulation, tax cuts. All these things have just benefited every American, not just the rich. And I can't state that enough. These tax cuts have helped everyone. and there's no reason to believe that he can't do the same thing over the next 4 years. Let me know what your thoughts are in the comments below. Have a good one.